A popular deli in downtown Chicago is no longer in business after a campaign to destroy their business was launched when they didn't fully support the Black Lives Matter movement. Faithwire spoke with the owners of Nini's Deli, and Dan Andros joins us now with more on the story. Dan, this is really interesting. Nini's Deli, it sounds like it was very popular, and you spoke with the family that went out of business. What do they think caused the protesters to target them?
Yeah, well, they were very popular, and they was run by Juan Riesco and his brother Jose, and so they were kind of like a Chicago fixture. They were socially media savvy, and so they were able to gain some notoriety that way. Had struck some high-profile business relationships with places like Nike and elsewhere in the Chicago area. But when the George Floyd, murder happened, and the protests started to go, there was, you might remember, a media blackout on social media where everybody was turning their screens black. And what happened was people started looking at Nini's and saying, hey, what's going on? They're awfully quiet over there. So they started to ask them, hey, what's your take on this? And so they started poking around, and finally they ended up giving a response.
Yeah, and explain a little bit, because it sounds like Nini's kind of had a nuanced response, if you will. They were supporting Black Lives Matter, but not completely. So explain that.
Yeah, they took a stance that a lot of Christians have taken, which is, of course, they're against injustice. Of course, they're against the horrible, act that happened to George Floyd. But they didn't want to, throw their full support behind the political organization Black Lives Matter. They said, actually, in their statement, they said Nini's Deli believes that all people were created equal in the image of God. We don't promote or agree with racism or hatred of any kind. They said they believe that all Black lives matter, and we know that only God can bring about justice that is deserved. But what happened was, people sort of took that online on social media as an all lives matter response, which, as you may know, a lot of Black Lives Matter protesters view that as sort of a dismissive response. And so it just created a firestorm on social media.
All right, and it sounds like their business has suffered to the point where they're no longer in business. What happens? How did their business fall apart?
Yeah, so Juan told us that basically all, quote, hell broke loose is how he described it, and the firestorm online just kept building and building, and they were saying, so wait, you don't support Black Lives Matter, what's going on? And so they started going after them and saying, why won't you say it? And then that turned into protests in the streets, and people were out there day after day and protesting, calling, and then going after their Christian views, calling them bigoted, calling them homophobic, et cetera, et cetera. And so eventually that led to all the business partnerships going away. So one business after another, Nike, et cetera, even Chance the Rapper went out there and denounced them. So they just lost all their business partnerships for having this stance. And they ended up just deciding to board up shop and close up shop.
All right, we are out of time, but really fascinating story. Appreciate you covering it. Thank you, Dan Andros.
Thank you.
And you can catch Faithwire right here on the CBN News Channel tonight at 9:30 Eastern.